The first Mortal Kombat movie made a strange decision. For a franchise built entirely around a tournament, the movie never actually showed one. Instead, we spend most of the film watching characters get ready for a competition that never happens. New fighters appear, powers unlock, Raiden explains the rules of the realms. But the thing the entire story is building toward, the Mortal Kombat tournament itself, never actually begins. And by the time the movie ends, something feels oddly unfinished. Because in Mortal Kombat, the tournament isn't just where the fights happen, it's the thing that makes the whole story move. So now, Mortal Kombat 2 has a much bigger job than simply making the fights bigger. It has to prove the franchise actually understands what Mortal Kombat is supposed to be. And the strange part is, this might not have been an accident. The first movie may have been designed to delay the real tournament on purpose, almost like the entire film was just one long prologue, which means Mortal Kombat 2 isn't really acting like a normal sequel. In a weird way, it might be the first movie that actually shows Mortal Kombat. And if you watch the first movie, you probably felt this without even thinking about it. The fights were entertaining, some of the characters were great, but when the movie ended, it felt like something important still hadn't happened yet. Almost like the story had just finished setting the stage, right when the real event was supposed to begin. In most Mortal Kombat stories, everything revolves around a competition. Fighters enter knowing they'll have to defeat stronger opponents to move forward. One match leads to the next, one fighter advances, another is eliminated, and every fight answers a question while creating a new one. Who survives this round, who faces the next opponent, and who's waiting at the end. That progression is what turns a series of fights into a story people can follow. But the first Mortal Kombat movie works very differently. Instead of watching fighters move through a tournament, we mostly watch them prepare for one. We meet Kano, we meet Kung Lao, Liu Kang unlock his powers, Raiden explains the conflict between the realms. Even the big action scenes feel more like random encounters than steps toward a final match. Kung Lao fights Natara, Jax fights Rico. But none of these fights move anyone closer to winning a tournament, because the tournament hasn't started. And that's why the ending of the movie feels unusual. Not because there weren't fights, but because the story never actually reached the thing it was building toward. And this is where Mortal Kombat 2 suddenly has a bigger challenge. Because the first movie did not really finish a story, it mostly delivered the setup. We spent an entire film watching characters get recruited, learning their abilities, preparing for the conflict between the realms. Everything points towards one moment, the tournament that decides Earthrealm's fate. But that moment never arrives. So Mortal Kombat 2 isn't just continuing the story, it's finally responsible for delivering the event the first movie promised. And that creates a very different kind of pressure. Because now, the sequel has to prove that the tournament actually matters. But there's another problem Mortal Kombat 2 could easily run into. The sequel could technically include the tournament and still make the exact same mistake again. Because simply showing the tournament isn't enough. The story actually needs to move through it. If the movie once again spends most of its time introducing characters, explaining lore, and setting up future fights, then the tournament might only appear near the end. And if that happens, the sequel might technically show Mortal Kombat, but the story will still feel like it hasn't really started yet. So if the sequel wants to avoid that problem, three things needs to happen. First, the tournament needs to start early, not in the final 20 minutes. The audience should see the competition unfold across the movie. Second, the fights needs to actually change the story. When characters enter the arena, something should happen. Someone advances, someone is eliminated, the balance between the realms shifts. And finally, the rivalries people care about needs to play out inside the tournament. Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Liu Kang, Shang Tsung. These characters shouldn't just clash randomly across different locations. Their fights should feel like moments the entire competition has been building toward. Because when the tournament works that way, every match suddenly matters. And if Mortal Kombat 2 actually commits to that idea, something interesting could happen. The sequel could end up feeling like the true beginning of the franchise. Because, for the first time, the story would actually move through the competition Mortal Kombat is famous for. fighters entering the arena, advancing through rounds, and finally reaching the battles that decide the fate of the realms. That's the version of Mortal Kombat fans have been waiting to see. So the real pressure on Mortal Kombat 2 isn't just whether the tournament appears this time, it's whether the story actually revolves around it. Because Mortal Kombat has never really just been about isolated fights. It's about what those fights decide, who advances, who falls, and which realm survives. If the sequel builds the story around that progression, it could feel like the moment the franchise truly begins. But if the tournament only shows up near the end, then Mortal Kombat may still be preparing for the story it keeps promising to start. So now I'm curious what you think. Do you think Mortal Kombat 2 will finally commit to the tournament structure, or will it keep building the world before the real competition begins? Let me know in the comments.